Saturday, the 23rd of May has come with some good news as President Uhuru Kenyatta has announced an 8-point economic stimulus program worth 54 billion shillings meant to cushion different sectors of the economy. To put a voice to this, I'll be speaking to Ndoho Wohoro, the CEO of Euclid Capital and former Director of General Public Debt Management at the National Treasury. It is a day that has also seen elders from the Kikuyu Council of Elders pronounce their support of the changes made in the ruling party Jubilee. We have these stories and more tonight. This is Saturday Night News on TV47. My name is Alan Owino. Here are the day's highlights.
Tonight on Saturday Primetime, President Uhuru Kenyatta announces a 54 billion shilling stimulus package to boost the economy. We break it down for you. Plus, heavy rains and floods continue to wreak havoc in Nyanza as the overflowing Lake Victoria reclaims over 10 kilometers of land. And Muslim faithful mark the end of Ramadan in unique Eid celebrations amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, welcome to the bulletin. Our sign language interpreter is Anne Wairimo. 5 people, 3 women and 2 men were killed today in a multiple crash on Kericho-Nakuru Highway. The accident, which involved a truck and 5 other vehicles, occurred at Londiani Junction in Kericho County. Londiani OCPD Musa Kongoli said 12 others were taken to various hospitals in Kericho. Elsewhere, former Kenya Sevens rugby player Alan Makaka has died after his car rammed into a trailer along Mombasa Road on Friday night.
The wreckage of the transit lorry that was transporting beer from Nakuru to Kericho being pulled from a ditch. The driver of this truck lost control after its brakes failed. It collided head-on with an oncoming 14-seater passenger matatu before ramming into 4 vehicles.
And it is alleged it failed its braking system, and to that end the driver was unable to control it, and then it had to ram into the oncoming passenger matatu, and thereby continued to cause more accidents to 4 more vehicles.
The accident left 5 people dead and 12 others nursing serious injuries at Londiani Sub-County Hospital. The spot where the accident occurred had a police roadblock and a team of health officials screening passengers' temperature.
Screening was being done here, and at the same time there was a roadblock. We might not be experts in matters of traffic, but then there are some things that are realistic and we all know and are obvious. Because if a roadblock is put in a place where people are, in case of an accident, in case of an eventuality, very many people will be affected.
Locals say the checkpoint is a major hazard since it is causing that section of the road to be jammed.
So we are making an appeal to the traffic fraternity that they take this screening and this roadblock up to the boundary of Kericho County and Nakuru County.
Elsewhere, former Kenya Sevens rugby player Alan Makaka has died after his car rammed into a trailer along Mombasa Road. The accident occurred on Friday night. Makaka made a total of 57 appearances on the Sevens World Series, managing 28 tries, and is ranked 21st overall amongst Kenya's all-time try scorers on the World Series. Aaron Kipkoech, TV47.
Moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has said it will require every Kenyan to adhere to COVID-19 containment measures once current restrictions are eased in order to avoid a spike in the infections. The country has recorded 31 new cases in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of COVID-19 cases to 1,192. The deaths stand at 50. So far, a total of 57 out of 650 samples that have been tested.
Mimi sina shaka Wakenya tukishirikiana, tuungane pamoja, tutashinda huu ugonjwa. Ile kitu ambaye itatusaidia kwa kikamilifu kuhakikisha ya kwamba tumeweza tena kufungua uchumi wetu na wananchi waweze kuendelea na maisha yao ya kawaida. Nimewaambia wenzangu, hii haitakuwa kwa sababu ya yale serikali itatenda. Itakuwa kwa sababu ya yale kila mmoja wetu kwa kibinafsi atafanya. Wewe uko na jukumu ya kuhakikisha umechunga mwenzako.
Now, just to make a slight correction on the previous story, it is not 50 samples, but rather 650 samples that have been tested so far. Let's continue. Muslims in Kenya joined other faithful around the world to mark the end of the holy month of Ramadan. The celebrations were, however, not marked with the usual pomp and color, since almost remained closed after the government had ordered closure of all religious centers to curb the spread of coronavirus.
This year's Eid has been celebrated differently compared to other years following the outbreak of COVID-19 that has seen many religious events halted in bid to curb the spread of coronavirus.
Kwa wakati huu ilikuwa ngumu sana ukilinganisha na mwaka jana. Kama ingekuwa ni wakati hii mwaka jana ungekuta shamra aina mingi, watu wanasherehekea Eid, watu wamenunua manguo, saizi hata sehemu ile ya kununua nguo kama Isili na nini imekuwa lockdown, watu hawezi ingia kule. So iko tofauti, iko kubwa sana. Pamoja na hivyo tumefanya mwanzo wa Ramadhani na tukamaliza. Kwa hivyo Waislamu wote nawaombea Saumul Makbul na Eidul Mubarak.
Alafu tuna furaha kama wakati ile nyingine kwa sababu jamii, marafiki wanatembeleana kwa hali moja au nyingine.
However, it was a relief to the less fortunate who got donations of foodstuffs from well-wishers, as it is the norm during Eid celebrations.
Tumepata chakula kupitia ofisi yetu kuu, Supreme Council of Kenya Muslim, 140 bags kutoka kwa rais wa nchi hii, Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, na hiyo chakula imefika hapa na tumedistribute almost vulnerable families wengi sana sehemu hii na hata nje, sababu tulikuwa na almost 25 to 30 mosque wanakuja tunadistribute, wanakuja kureceive hizo dry food hapa na wanapeleka kwa msikiti zao, wanagawia watu ambao wanahitajika kupata hizo vyakula.
Elsewhere, butchers in Kiamaiko market are decline in business as there are only few customers willing to buy compared to last year's Eid celebrations.
Biashara iko chini. Kwa kuuza nyama kulingana na market ya nyama na mbuzi ya Mbatani nayo. Iko kuuza nyama na 400, customer analalamika na hakuna customer ama kazi iko chini. Kama saa hii mbuzi hata anaweza chinja 10 na haiziki na ishi. Hata sabaka jioni mbuzi 10 tunamaliza mpaka jioni. Lasia tunaizanga hata mtu mmoja anaweza chinja 50 na inaisha. Kwa saa hii economy iko chini zaidi mkubwa.
Eli Logova, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, elders from Kikuyu Council of Elders have pronounced their support for President Uhuru Kenyatta's action of making changes in Jubilee Party leadership. The elders have asked leaders from Mount Kenya to come together and avoid personal indifference in order to accomplish their promises. The elders also donated foodstuffs worth 500,000 shillings to cushion the vulnerable during the COVID-19 pandemic. Zablon Mashari reports.
Kikuyu Council of Elders, led by Dr. David Mudhoga, has said the president should have done changes in Jubilee Party leadership earlier in order to accomplish his agenda before his term comes to an end.
It has not been easy for him to deliver his agendas, and given that he has about 2 years to go, it has probably even taken him slightly longer. He should have done that one earlier, so that it gives him time
to deliver what he has promised Kenyans, because at the end of the day, we shall ask him, what have you left for Kenyans?
Following the recent infighting that has emerged between leaders of Mount Kenya region, the elders urged for unity and commitment to serving Kenyans.
You are finding that the leaders are the ones who are not, who are divided. They are the ones who are misleading people. But we want the leaders to be united just as the voters are united.
The elders also backed President Kenyatta's move of collaborating with other parties, saying the move will enhance national unity.
We would like to see Kenya eating from the same plate. We are happy that we do not have now to hear that this is the opposition. It is not good when we hear that this community or this person is in the opposition.
The elders spoke while donating food stuff worth 500,000 shillings to COVID-19 emergency fund at KICC in Nairobi. Zablon Macharia, TV47, Nairobi.
All right, let's move on. President Uhuru Kenyatta has unveiled a 53.7 billion shilling stimulus program to help cushion the economy from the ravages of COVID-19. President Kenyatta says we will have to open the economy at some point and remain vigilant so as not to fuel the spread of the virus.
On his 7th address to the nation on COVID-19 pandemic, President Uhuru Kenyatta gave a ray of hope that the country will soon be opened up.
Wakati umefika na nimeambia mawaziri wetu na haswa maofisa wetu wa afya waanze kuambia Wakenya, waanze kuwaeleza Wakenya ya kwamba hatuwezi kuendelea na lockdown, hatuwezi kuendelea maisha na curfew.
And as the country readies for a rebound, President Uhuru Kenyatta has announced 53.7 billion shillings program to jumpstart the economy. In the 8-point economic stimulus program, the education sector has been allocated an extra 6.5 billion shillings. This is to hire 10,000 teachers and 1,000 ICT interns to support digital learning. The kitty will also support the improvement of school infrastructure, including acquisition of 250,000 locally fabricated desks.
We have been trying to do everything we can within the resources available to see how we can support these vulnerable Kenyans. That is why every single week my administration has been dispatching a total of 250 million shillings to vulnerable families.
Other sectors that have been included in the stimulus packages include health sector that was allocated 1.7 billion shillings, agriculture sector 3 billion shillings, and infrastructure refurbishment at 5 billion shillings. The government will also inject 3 billion shillings as seed capital for SME credit guarantee scheme. The intention is to provide affordable credit to small and micro enterprises to jumpstart the tourism sector and protect its players from heavy financial losses. The government will provide soft loans to hotels and related establishments through the Tourism Finance Corporation. 2 billion shillings will be set aside to provide renovation of the facilities and restructuring of businesses operations by actors in the tourism industry.
In addition to this, funding will also be set aside to support the operations of our premier hospitality institution, which is Utalii College, to guarantee the steady supply of well-trained hospitality professionals. The tourism component of the stimulus program will also engage 5,500 community scouts under the Kenya Wildlife Service at a cost of Kenya shillings 1 billion.
President Uhuru Kenyatta pledged to provide necessary support for healthcare workers in fight against COVID-19 disease, which has now claimed 50 lives in the country with 1,192 infections. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47 Nairobi.
Right, that story now brings us to our first live interview via Skype, where I'm joined by Ndoho Wohoro, who's the CEO of Euclid Capital and former Director of General Public Debt Management at the National Treasury. Mr. Ndoho, can you get me?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening, and I'd just love to get straight into it. Now, agriculture contributes majorly to our GDP, and that's about a quarter of our GDP, and only 3 billion has been allocated to cushion the sector. Is this enough?
I think it's a beginning. If you look at how this stimulus works, you have a rolling set of stimuli coming through. So I imagine this is the first of maybe 2 or 3 to come. And so we most expect that there'll be more coming down the road.
Okay.
That's a good beginning.
Okay. Now let's just, we want to kind of dissect the stimulus package bit by bit. And now let's move on to the health bit package of it, because one would argue that we've spent a lot of time on the COVID-19 and the funds that have been allocated for expanding bed capacity and employing extra staff should have been channeled towards offering liquidity to most hospitals that are on the verge of crumbling due to lack of routine checkups and treatment of other diseases. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the nature of a pandemic has been such that things tend to get skewed. So there's a lot of focus on only the immediate and present danger.
Yes.
Now, as a general rule, you'll find that whenever that happens, other sectors get neglected. And I don't think Kenya has been any different from other countries in that other sectors of health have been neglected. In fact, I know for a fact that people refuse to go to hospital because even where they've got other conditions, for fear of being labeled a COVID patient, and so we've had this backup happening in the economy of people not showing up, and that does mean, of course, that once the restrictions are lifted, I think we may actually have a run on our hospitals, especially as people with all the other conditions begin to show up at hospitals for treatment.
Okay. Now let's talk a bit about the SMEs. The SMEs account for nearly 85% of the country's employment, and they received 3 billion as seed capital for SME guarantee scheme. What does this mean for the SMEs, pardon me, some of which the government still owes a total of 30 billion shillings?
Yes, I think it was, if I got that right, I think it was 10 billion that's been set aside for the SMEs, for the credit guarantee scheme. I think you'll notice that among all the initiatives, it's the one that's got the most, and that is as it should be. But you'll also realize that Treasury yesterday, I think, released a further payment towards pending bills. And so that, I think, is where it should be.
Yes.
Not only is it 80% of our population, it's also that the SMEs in the third world act like the social nets for the vast majority of our populations. Now, between that and agriculture, then you'd expect that those are the two sectors that will get the most by way of support.
All right. Okay, let's now move to another bit of the stimulus package, and that's the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy that has received a 600 million boost. You talk about building and boosting the local manufacturing industry when you refer to the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy. But why did the stimulus package focus solely on purchasing locally manufactured vehicles vis-a-vis strengthening the whole manufacturing sector in totality?
As again, I think it's only a start of the imagine.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, 53 billion in an $8 trillion shilling economy, it's a very small amount. In fact, I think it comes to about 0.6%. And if you really want to make an impact, you should be talking about 3 to up to 5%. So you're talking round about a real good stimulus package would be round about between 400 billion and 800 billion. So you can imagine that the magnitude of the size of the problem is bigger. Now, for SMEs,
yes,
I'd also say that one of the things that's really interesting with the stimulus packages work, when you've had a situation where there's been a psychological impact, quite apart from the economic, it's not enough to just focus on the economics. And so in this context now, you'd imagine that some of the seed money would also go towards finding ways to loosen and to create, in a sense, almost like an enabling environment. And I don't hear a lot said about that psychological effect of a pandemic like this. Like even small businesses would, in a sense, need also to be encouraged to come out. As you can imagine, a good number of businesses have actually gone under for good.
All right.
So there's a psychology of telling people, okay, the gates are open, But we as a government are here now to really support you to rebuild from scratch.
All right. So just as we wrap up, Ndoho, any personal thoughts on what you thought should have been given priority in the package and did not feature?
I wouldn't really pick one. I think the focus on agriculture, maybe agriculture should have got more.
Yeah.
But I've said to you that's also because I believe that there's more on the way. I would also say though that maybe more than anything else in the totality of the approach to the future,
yes,
we really should be talking about an economic reconstruction. We're not talking about a recovery as such.
All right.
Because there are businesses that have collapsed never to return. And so in a sense, questions around the economic restructuring of the whole economy.
Yes.
We have to address issues of poverty, issues of income distribution, wealth concentration in a few hands. We have to talk about the psychology of recovery as far as with so many poor people, how do you begin to make sure that the shape the economy takes going forward is one that is extremely inclusive.
Okay.
So maybe in terms of going forward, painting a picture of painting the big picture first, and then telling us how this will work, I think is a particularly important one. So for me, economic reconstruction is absolutely the phrase that we should be using.
All right, Ndoho Wohoro, thank you very much for your time this evening. That's all the time we had for that.
Karibu.
All right, that was Ndoho Wohoro, the CEO of Euclid Capital, the former director of General Public Debt Management at the National Treasury, just trying to put a voice with regards to the stimulus package that was given with President Uhuru Kenyatta today, and I believe we've gotten some insights from that live interview via Skype. At this point, let's take a short break, but when we get back, we'll be back with more news. Right, thank you very much for staying with us right here on TV 47. Let's now continue with the bulletin. In the park to jumpstart the economy and ensure there is cash flow in the economy, the government is planning to spend 10 billion shillings engaging our youth in restoring public hygiene standards, urban civil works through the Kazi Mtaani initiative.
As a government, we have started to harness the energy of our young people, engaging them in the National Hygiene Program, that is more commonly now being referred to as Kazi Mtaani initiative. Under this program, as a government, we expect to spend a total of 10 billion Kenya shillings, engaging our youth in restoring public hygiene standards, in urban civil works, and other public undertakings. Currently, during the trial period, which we have been executing over the last few weeks, we have engaged a total of 26,000 young people. We now intend, hopefully with the passage of the budget that we have put before Parliament, to increase that number to 200,000 young men and women across our country. And also to make it sustainable in the post-coronavirus period. We want to regiment these young people into livelihood guilds, and these are small groups of young people with a purpose and a passion for their country.
Right, that story now brings us to our second live interview via Skype as well, and I'm joined by Edwin Kigoli, who's the CEO of Practic Labs PLC. Edwin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, let's begin with the big question that I believe is in everybody's mind right now. What's different with this one? I mean, past youth programs have turned out to be a big failure, haven't they?
Come up again?
I'm asking with regards to the Kazi Mtaani initiative that was given in the stimulus package, what's different with this one? Because we've had prior similar programs that have turned out to be a failure.
Yes, well, you will realize that across the country there are some youths who say perhaps the government is not doing enough, perhaps they offer programs that don't become realistic on the ground, perhaps they offer paperwork, but when you go to the ground to find the substance in the programs,
yes,
you can hardly find a trace of it. But as young people, we still hold a total faith in our government, and I just want to state that this government is ours, and this economic stimulus plan that the president has put forward or advanced to our economy post-COVID, we as young people, we fully embrace.
Yes.
But however, I want to state the following, that there are categories of young people. They are the skilled young people, they are the unskilled young people. So we urge the government to also make sure that when they are advancing these packages, they are able to capture these categories so that people like university graduates who are unemployed out there also have a reason to celebrate.
Yes.
Because when you look at the past or most recent interventions, they have mostly captured the unskilled labor, whereby these university students are highly entrepreneurial, highly skillful, and when it comes to innovation and creativity, they are the best at it.
Yes.
And innovation, creativity powers up the economy. And right now, it is about digital transformation and revolution. And COVID-19 has exposed us to a situation whereby it is about innovation, creativity.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
about making sure that we are technologically advanced,
Yes.
so that we are able, even in situations such as this, we are able to move forward our economy so that we continue to experience productivity. And Kenya is ranked among the best innovative countries in Africa.
Yes.
So we should take advantage of that innovation to power up our economy, because present and future, it is about technology, it is about innovation, it is about creativity and entrepreneurship. And our young people are best at that, and our government should be able to support our young people's initiatives so
Yes.
that we move our economy forward
Yes.
and move the agenda forward.
All right. Now, speaking about scandals, we've had scandals in the past with regards to similar programs. From where you sit from, what needs to be handled differently for Kazi Mtaani to have a lasting impact?
Well, it comes down to the sincerity of the program itself.
Yes.
And as I have stated earlier on, it is about us, the people, having faith in our government. And let me just state the following.
Yeah.
That there is no government in the world that has ever been able to achieve 100% of its manifesto or blueprint.
Yes.
It is about our people to come together and say, our government is promising A, B, C, D.
Yes.
We as people, what is it that we can do to supplement the effort that our government is putting in place? When government advances such intervention measures, especially after this coronavirus thing has gone away, it is up to us to come together and rally effort and resources so that we power up our economy. Because when the government cannot deliver on its promises, we are the people who bear the brand.
Yeah.
And when government, that means we succeed as a nation. So I want to call upon young people to bring forward ideas, to bring forward vision and entrepreneurial ideas so that we together power up our economy. But government could also do this. Because if you look at the economic spectrum,
yes,
there are hundreds of thousands of students who graduate annually, but you find just a handful of them secure employment. And when you choose the route of starting a business, the financing aspect becomes a limiting factor to young people, risking their ideas. They are unable to find somebody who can believe in them and invest in them. Because when we go to banks, many of them say young people are risk people. They don't want to lend to us, and we become like we are left on our own. And therefore, we come to government and say, like when you advance this Stawi loan, this is a very noble initiative.
Yes.
But this only captures the people who already taken a step into the future.
Yes.
For instance, it takes about 6 months for you to qualify because your business at least has to be in existence for about 6 months. And then also comes down to your turnover. They look at your turnover. Yes, that is very correct. That is very good.
Yeah.
But again, people with brilliant ideas that perhaps if you invest in them and you're able, like let's say we repute the period of 6 months downwards to about 3 months,
yes,
so that if anyone can take a personal loan somewhere and they invest, they know in about 3 months when they have worked so hard and they have worked so brilliantly, they can go to Stawi and get a loan, settle what they borrowed, and their business is up and running. Because once this corona thing is over, we are going to realize the full impact when we see the number of young people unemployed almost doubling. Because there are those who are living on daily wages, yet they are graduates, and there are those who are, operating on tips, which no longer work right now. They are really struggling, and many people across the country are very upset. But again, it is my humble appeal to them that let us trust President Kenyatta's economic stimulus plan so that we move together as a nation. And on that bit, lastly, this is what we want to say.
Okay.
That the government is remaining with a very, very few years to its term to end.
Yeah.
And what we want is to plug into the Big Four agenda.
Yes.
And what is, you see, for agenda like manufacturing, very important. Government can invest in it as President Kenyatta has outlined.
Yes.
Then we're likely to see jobs being created for young people. We're likely to see the economy coming back to life and growing by double digits. So
Edwin.
I want government to trust young people.
Yes.
Let them be trusted, even to make mistakes. Let them be trusted. Let them be given that much needed incentive. Let the government incent young people's ideas so that
let me cut you. Just before, Edwin.
Together collectively make progress.
Yeah, just before you finish on that point that you're trying to explain, let me cut you short and introduce another question. You've talked of young kids having brilliant ideas, and also the Kazim Tani being an important and noble initiative that has been thought through by the government. But there seems to be a disconnect between the youth and the government, because most of the times the youth complain about not being given an ear with regards to whatever they urgently need. Do you feel like this is one of these scenarios? Like, it might be a good program, but not necessarily what the youth might not need at this point?
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
Opportunity never locates somebody if you don't make effort.
Okay.
And with the president's initiative on this sanitation program,
yes,
our environment is critical. Our environment is that sensitive. It is that important, and the amount allocated to the youth department, I think it is the highest in history of the Jubilee's administration life.
Yes.
And what I would want to tell my fellow young people is to take advantage of this program, take advantage of this package that President has advanced.
Yes.
And when you look at the allocation to the Ministry of Education in terms of hiring young people, that is intern, ICT intern, that is going to go a long way in reducing the backlog of young people who are employed.
Yes.
And when we tread that route, then we are making significant steps forward in terms of reducing the number of young people who are unemployed.
Yeah.
And this is a time where we need to rally effort behind government initiative. Let us trust it. We know there are questions here and there. People say government has been squandering money on bad ideas and,
yes,
and perhaps allocating a number of things. But again, this is our government.
Okay.
This is the government of the day. And we have to learn to trust it. We have to learn to say, if government cannot deliver fully on its mandate,
yes,
we as a people, we can come together and as young people and say, if you fall short here, we will supplement you there.
yes,
So that it's we coming to support government as well as government creating a conducive environment for us young people to support its agenda.
All right.
And we fully support this agenda, and we want President Kenyatta, when he leaves office, is able to say, I was supported by young people and my agenda was a success.
Okay.
And when we're back to normal,
yes,
we would like the government to look critically at this Big Four agenda.
Yeah.
Health is very, very important.
All right.
When you talk about health, touching the life of that old mama in the village,
yeah,
she will be President Kenyatta when he leaves office.
All right.
When you talk about manufacturing, you are talking about creating jobs for our young people.
Okay.
When you talk about food, you're making sure that everybody goes home to get a meal.
Okay.
Not people wondering whether they'll have a meal or they won't have a meal.
All right, Edwin.
Yes,
So,
that
let me.
becomes very important.
I'm being told we are running out of time, but I just want to give you quick 20 seconds for you to tell us what Pratik Labs is all about. You are the CEO of Pratik Labs PLC. Could you kindly just quickly tell us what this firm deals with?
Well, Pratik Labs is an initiative that does practical lessons in chemistry, biology, and physics to our secondary schools.
Yes.
And we are addressing the inequality that has been witnessed in terms of schools having laboratory facilities and those that don't have.
All right.
We thought, what is it that we can do to bridge this gap? Because these students at the end of the road, they have to sit for the same exam. So we have developed a program where schools and students can sign up to it, and then we create an account for them, and they make requisitions for practicals in chemistry, biology, and physics.
Yes.
And when they make these requisitions, we upload them to their respective accounts, and they access them there. And the benefit with this program is that these practicals are documented.
Yes.
Ordinarily, we would go to a laboratory facility, perform a practical, and then it ends there. By the time you're doing the 10th or 20th practical, we can hardly remember what we did initially.
All right.
So here, students, those who are quick learners and those who are a bit slow, they are well prepared for, because they have a chance to review and constantly review, which enhances mastery of content and comprehension thereof.
All right, Edwin.
A program that is science-based. We are purely focusing on science because government advanced these STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay.
And look at sustainable goal number 4. And when you go to Kenya Vision 2030 under the social pillar on qualification, we thought, how can we plug into these noble global and national goals?
All right, Edwin, I'm being told I'm running out of time over here, so I have to cut you short on that.
And we encourage people to sign up to it because science is today and forever.
Okay, fine. Edwin Kigoli over there, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much as well.
All right, that was Edwin Kigoli, the CEO of Practical Labs, giving us his ideas and insights on the Kazi Mtaani initiative that was part of the stimulus package that was given by the president today. Let's move on to other stories. Flash floods, landslides, and other, pardon me, let me just check this again. All right, as we wait for that to be corrected, let me just recap the interview that we had earlier on. That was with Edwin Kigoli, was giving us the insights on that issue with regarding to Kazi Mtaani. I think that has been sorted out and we can continue to the next story. Flash floods, landslides, and other rain-related disasters have killed hundreds in East Africa this year, displacing tens of thousands of families. Homes and roads have been swept away around Lake Victoria and crops have been destroyed. This has also hampered COVID-19 response efforts. Although the effects of climate change on seasonal rainfall in East Africa are still unclear, environmentalists say that the warmer weather combined with poor water management around places like Lake Victoria is to blame.
It is a sin that has become all too common here on the banks of Lake Victoria in Kenya. Weeks of heavy rainfall have left many settlements submerged. There have always been rains in this region, long and short, but many people here say that what they are seeing now is unprecedented. In Bunyala, Caspar Ajuma, a local council official, is here to survey the damage.
This is a center, almost 10 kilometers from where the initial land was. 10 kilometers radius, you can see. The lake has reclaimed much of our land, and now we don't have anywhere to farm, don't have anywhere to live, to build our houses.
He is concerned about the impact on people's homes and livelihoods, which are under muddy water now. The floods have killed at least 250 people in Kenya and affected some 800,000 more. Many of them are now living in informal camps like this one in Kadundu. Millicent Agata, a widow, is preparing a meal for her grandchildren. They are safe but hungry. We have been here for 3 weeks now, she tells us. Millicent further explains that they are in great need of assistance, especially food, because they have lost their livelihood. For the fishing communities of Lake Victoria, the flooding could not have come at a worse time. The fish population has already declined because of overfishing, pollution, and the invasive water hyacinth plant. More than 20 million people living around Lake Victoria in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda depend on the lake's fish.
Hili janga ni kubwa sana. Hajatokea Bunyala, nasikia tokea 61 huko kitambo, lakini si kama hili. Ni kubwa, watu wote wamedhirika huko. Manyumba yameenda, watoto wengi washakimbia, vitu vimekimbia. Hatuna chakula, kaona watu wamekaa hapa. Unaona uso mama anapika chapati hapa. Ni senti. Hatuna senti. Hakuna kazi, watu hakuna kuvua samaki.
According to environmental campaigners, climate change is one of the key factors causing the devastation.
The floods, the droughts, the wildfires that we see are as a result of climate crisis. So there is need for collective action, and this needs to be done urgently. We don't have time to waste.
Soil erosion caused by deforestation as well as poor land management, which allows people to develop homes and businesses on Lake Victoria's shores, are also to blame. The people of Lake Victoria must now wait for these waters to recede so they can return home. They live in uncertainty, not knowing when the next flood will come. They do not know when the lake waters will recede either. Tracy Mokami, TV47.
Now, since the spread of coronavirus, employees, especially those working in office settings, were forced to work from home. Some are required to attend meetings virtually via different platforms using their phones and laptops. It is for this reason that Kenya's gaming tech startup Usiku Games saw a need and launched the first made-in-Africa video conferencing system that will enable users enjoy quality calls with unlimited attendees at more affordable prices. Andreen Kilemi with more.
Kenya's gaming tech startup Usiku Games has launched a web-based system dubbed Gumzo that will enable its users to hold meetings at a cost of 100 shillings per week.
Gumzo actually was inspired by the COVID-19 situation currently. You realize that right now there's a lot of anxiety, families are separated, there's that disconnect that is existing currently as a result of physical distance. So Gumzo was actually inspired by this particular situation. What makes Gumzo so different when it comes to even usage of bandwidth is that the servers sit here in Africa. The servers actually sit in South Africa at the moment. And Gumzo will even go to the rest of Africa.
According to the managing director Alex Owiti, the system is free and safe.
Right, let's move on to other stories. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has said African nations should use antibodies to find out whether the slower spread and lower mortality rate of the new coronavirus on the continent is due to patchy data or a more resilient population. Blair says the information would guide leaders in deciding whether to extend lockdowns or other restrictions that are damaging economies, exacerbating hunger and slowing the fight against other deadly diseases like malaria, tuberculosis and HIV and AIDS. Africa has cumulatively reported nearly 100,000 COVID-19 cases so far and just over 3,000 deaths, far fewer than in many European nations. But low rates of testing and patchy reporting of death means outbreaks of the virus may be undetected in many countries.
Africa is there are antibody tests that can tell you whether you've had the disease. These tests they vary in accuracy, and so a lot of Western countries haven't wanted to use these simple antibody tests for knowing whether one individual has had the disease or not. But where these antibody tests could be really valuable, I think, in an African context, is that they are accurate enough that you could sample your population and at least, like a kind of opinion polls, show what percentage of the population has likely been affected. And you could do that in cities, and you can do that obviously in the outlying areas. And I think that would be a very worthwhile investment by Africa, because they're cheaper to use tests, and you would at least see then, you'd start to get some knowledge of, is it that the disease has spread but people are resilient and asymptomatic, which actually I think a lot of African cases are asymptomatic, or is it that actually it hasn't spread? And this would be very important information to know. Africa, it can't and shouldn't mimic the policies of Western countries. It's got to take its own path out of this crisis and do it in a way that recognizes that Africa presently on COVID is actually in a better position than much of the rest of the world. And it's therefore got to make sure, yes, it keeps in that good position, but it also takes account of these other challenges. Otherwise, I fear that we end up in a situation where the measures that we take to suppress COVID end up doing really fundamental damage.
Right, that story brings us to the end of today's bulletin. I've been your host for tonight, but until next time, be good, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your viewing.